Hello, what is good? It is Bo King. Got the Season 10 patch notes that just came out. I've definitely spent a lot of time reviewing this, going through this, prioing it, trying to just make sure I understand everything, didn't miss anything, all those kind of things. So I've spoken to a lot of people, and I know a lot of people have kind of just been like, yep, screw this. I'm not looking through all this. This is way too much. I don't want to do this. Blah, 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 blah. So, I'm making this video so I can go through everything with you guys and hopefully make it a little more digestible, point out kind of the most important things in here. There is a ton of information, so I do understand the reluctance to want to go through it all. So, I'm going to try to quickly run through all of this. Probably going to end up being like 20-30 minutes. But so much important information in here, so I guess we may as well just get started here. So, off the rip, bunch of stuff that we already knew that had all been announced. Kind of goes over the new charm system, set bonuses. I think it's really cool how they're doing the weapon scaling. Like they mentioned, all weapons will have dual scaling. So pretty cool. I said at varying amounts, but that's nothing new. We're used to things kind of scaling at different values. So super exciting. This is going to open avenues for cooler builds. So while we will have less attribute points, I guess you do have now potentially more options for scaling. Like if something now scales with strength on top of intelligence, you can also, just mix and match your points like that. So again, is going to be like a school grading system, if you will. Um, Very cool. I'm definitely happy with this. I think this is super cool. And excited to see how that's going to play out and what changes with that. Attributes, they did go over this as well, how they said they're going to remove those, blah, 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 just so that, I guess what they said is they want the actual attribute points to matter, not just the nodes. The 300 con attribute bonus is being changed into an infix perk on rings. That is insane. So super nice. As everybody knows, that 300 con grit was just like so annoying. Such a just a blanket buff that was given to almost everything that had that. So that's awesome that that's getting removed. Super happy about that. And now you would have to, again, use an infix perk on a ring to get that. New heart rune, Phantom Blades. As a low constitution ranged player, I'm definitely not excited for this. I can already see someone with a great axe using Tempest Fury now using this as well, and now there's just going to be twice as many spinning blades on top of me. But whatever, it's definitely cool. I think heart runes are a really cool part of the game, so super cool. If you're excited about this, I'm excited for you. I definitely won't be running this, but it does look cool. I like the kind of idea of it, so I always like seeing new things. So cool, new heart rune. I wish they added more. That would be awesome. Perks. If you watched my last season 10 video, this was one of my predictions. I was predicting they would remove Hardy from the game. So if you remember, I told you guys look for those rings on the market that didn't have Hardy. And maybe you could get a really good deal. So I hope some of you got some good steals. I know I definitely did. So pretty cool. Hardy has been reworked to be Gambled Energy. 5% damage while stamina is not full. So it's essentially like a mini Opal. I know that's definitely good for my build as a bow player. I'm not sure for everybody else, but definitely fine with that. I don't mind having that on at the very beginning. I might switch it off later, but at least for the start, I do not mind having that on those rings. Continuing forward, we knew this. Yeah, everything will be offensive, defensive, or skill. Very cool, very cool. They're just kind of talking about how they reworked stuff and blah, 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 and how they want you to use the new perks. Yeah, we get that. Cool. For the gems will no longer convert attributes, just damage types. So what that means is if you put a ruby in a bow, you can still make the bow fire attuned, but you can't make the bow scale with intelligence. If you did that strategy, how you could put in different gems, and it was like, hey, if this attribute was higher, then you can scale this at 70% or whatever it is. I literally never did that, so I don't know what it Oh, alarm. Don't know what that actually is, but again, gems will only do the damage change now. They're not going to switch how the weapon scales with attributes. Their reasoning is they want to lean into using the attributes more strategically. I like that. That's super cool. Another big change is Rune Glass. Um, your gem used to get nerfed when you would upgrade it in the Rune Glass, and it would lose a small amount of defensive properties, but now that is no longer the case. So, like they said, the functionality was based off of the second highest, like they used to be, but that's not the case, and so now they will be based off the highest tier 5 gems, so you'll get that full defense. I know there were some people just not rune glassing stuff because they wanted more defense, but now that won't be an issue because you will get the maximum efficacy from that gem. Super cool, super cool. Artifacts, pretty straightforward. I mean, what you would expect to have happen. So pretty cool. And then attuned leather pants and old crown do still have their effect with the attributes, so that they're not completely useless. So that's nice to hear. For the jewelry, these are kind of flat buffs, I guess, to again help with that compensation for maybe getting rid of perks, for getting rid of attributes. As you can see here, you're just going to be getting those flat buffs from all of your jewelry for everybody as long as they're high enough gear score. So super cool. That's just a nice little extra bonus. Okay, getting into the set bonuses. The set bonuses are they're definitely very unique. Um, Starting off with the Enraged set, I'm not going to go too into this one because this one was already released. This was already talked about. But essentially, what you're doing is you're going to be doing more damage and taking more damage. And so it's kind of that trade-off that you're taking while, yes, you're going to be taking more damage. You're kind of banking on the fact that because of your DPS, because the buff is better, you're going to be able to compete super well, and you're going to be able to out DPS them. So super cool set. I like the trade-offs. It's definitely a cool idea. The infixes for it are definitely pretty cool. Just make sure you're looking at the numbers. Certain infixes will only apply if you're running certain sets, because maybe you need to have 15 stacks, and if you need 15 stacks, you have to be running at least the tier 3 right here. So just pay attention to that, but super cool. The second wind set. Cool. So, while exhausted, so again, this set is going to deal with if you exhaust yourself a lot. So, typically, not a good idea to be exhausting yourself, but for whatever reason, if your build calls for that and you do that all the time, here we go. So, if you're potentially running Great Sword or Great Axe, I don't know, and you're exhausting yourself, doing all the dodges, getting on top of people, and then just throwing down your combos, here you go. Very cool. Um, and if you want to, it's going to give you higher DPS and also remove that slow. Hitting an enemy within 5 meters will remove the slow. That's pretty strong. So you're kind of rolling that gamble, I guess, where you're going to exhaust yourself, but if you land that hit, then it's going to get rid of the slow of you being exhausted, which is, I mean, that's like the main downside of being exhausted is how slow it makes you. So super cool. If you want to go for the 4 stack, obviously you're going to get that lifesteal and empower as well. For the infixes, you got 4 options down there. While exhausted, you can get interruptible. While under your stam, gain crit chance, almost like a little vital synergy, but with crit chance. That's pretty cool though, because yeah, if you double dodged or exhausted yourself, you would definitely have a really increased chance at hitting a crit. Um, These all look pretty good. I'd probably go for this Enervated Accuracy. That one looks really cool. I think this one's probably the best one. Either that or maybe this haste one if it's you're just trying to stay moving, but I do really like that crit chance one. That seems pretty cool. So super cool. Moving on to the Protector Blessings set. So this looks like it is going to be for healers. I'm not going to go too into it because I'm not a healer, so I don't know how good, how bad something could be for this. But applying a heal to somebody above half, you get a stack. When you're at max stacks, you get a rend, but you kind of take the trade-off where you're going to have a rend, but they're going to get a fortify. So that's pretty cool, especially because the fortify is double what the rend is, and honestly, if the healer is safe free casting and not even attacking, doesn't even matter if they have a rend on them because they're just going to be, doing a healing thing. Gain 3% base damage per stack. I don't know how beneficial that would be as a healer to sacrifice 2 more to get increased damage, and I guess there is a little additional healing to it, but if you're a healer, check out the Protector's Blessing set, see if you think it's OP. The Overcharged set, interesting little set here. It does not appear that there's any infixes for this one, but hitting an enemy within 5 meters or killing an enemy grants an overcharge stack. Each stack increases your base damage by 5% and affliction resistance by 10%. You are also inflicted with 4% rend per stack. So you can get up to 3 stacks, which would give you 12% rend on yourself, but you would be getting a 15% increase to your base damage and a 30% increase to affliction resistance if you were able to get that fully charged. So pretty cool. It's got a 5-second cooldown in terms of that. So definitely a way that you could get some DPS stacked up. I definitely do think this is pretty cool. I don't know if it's anything that I would run. I think it is something possible with a bow set that you could run, because sometimes you are in close, or when you just finish off the kill after you got that kill, if you're just sitting there free firing, you can just increase your damage, and you could run that with like Mortal Empowerment or something like that and run something cool. Anyways, the Elementally Charged set, do think this is a super cool one. I think if you were running, obviously the magic non-magic combo, you could do some really cool things with this, whether you're running Bow Void Gauntlet, whether you're running Void Gauntlet Rapier, whether you're running IG Rapier, whether you're running Void Gauntlet Abyss, Great Axe, tons and tons of things. There's lots of really cool ways to do this. So let's get into it. Magical weapon abilities. Again, magical weapons, that is only referring to IGVG, Fire Staff, and Life Staff. Those are going to be the only magical weapons. So, anyways, they are going to do slightly less damage, but when you utilize them, you're going to get that elemental charge. So basically, the way I could explain it is, if you're on Void Gauntlet, you throw out your orb, blah blah blah, it's going to do slightly less damage, but then when I switch back to my bow, and it says activating an ability of a non-magical weapon, so that would be like if I used Evade Shot. So I switch back to my bow, I use Evade Shot, and that is going to add that 10% base damage of that element to that weapon's attacks for 10 seconds. Super weirdly worded. I think this is the worstly worded thing I've ever read. The worstly I don't even know, I worded that terribly. But basically, use an ability with your magic weapon, swap to your non-magic weapon, and then you're basically going to get that attunement, essentially, is what the Elementally Charged set is doing. It's basically giving you that a slightly lower attunement that you're able to proc there. So super cool. It says that element is added to the weapon's attacks, which makes me think maybe it's not abilities, it's just going to be your basic attacks. I'm not sure. I hope it's everything. Again, I don't like how this is worded. It can be kind of hard to tell, but use your orb, you switch to your bow, you pop Evade Shot, and then after you do that Evade Shot will consume the charge, and then it leads me to believe that for the next 10 seconds, potentially everything, but most likely I'm thinking just my basic attacks are going to have a little extra kick to them. So I think that's super cool. Doesn't seem like this is too valuable to go all in with the 4. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. If you're doing like a mirror matchup and you're Firestaff IG or IGVG and you're playing up against another IGVG, I don't know, maybe this could be beneficial, but it seems like all of these higher tier ones are just not worth it to index into. I would think it would be the opposite, where it would be progressively getting better with the new one, but I swear for all of these, it just seems like the lowest tier one is what you really want, and then the second tier one is kind of like, don't care, don't want to invest that much. So anyways, the infixes, as you can see here, While you have no charges, you take 5% less elemental damage. You can increase your regen of mana. Um, let's see, stamina regen rate, as well as getting some haste. So you can choose what you value here. Nothing's totally jumping out at me. I kind of like this elemental hunger because there's no drawback and you're kind of just getting a little tankier with that. But go through, decide what you think is the best. Stifling set. I do think this is kind of a cool one. Hitting an enemy with an attack while all of your abilities are on cooldown silences your target for 2 seconds and yourself for 1 second. So basically, I'm thinking this would work well with weapons like Crescent Wave. It could work well with weapons like Spear, potentially. Rapier, even if you're running the Flourishing Finish combo. Something where you are able to just get out every ability that you're running very quickly and then hit an auto attack, whether it's a light or heavy, to get that silence on them. Could stop them from healing, could stop them from dodging, blah blah blah, whatever it is. I do think this is pretty cool for able to land that, because especially if your abilities are on cooldown and you're just trying to sit there and use auto attacks, you don't really care if you get silenced for that 1 second. But do think that is pretty cool. Again, I don't think it's worth it to index into this further. If you only have them silenced for 2 seconds, even taking advantage of that is so hard. It's just going to fade away so quickly. But I do think that's pretty cool. A potential one to run. Could be silencing people from a distance with the bow. I think that's pretty cool. Again, all of your infix perks there. Not totally sure. I think that exiting a dodge while silenced will trigger an AoE that damages nearby targets. That sounds pretty cool. But I would probably just run the damages increased by 5% when hitting a silenced target. And then if you index all the way, now you're doing 15% more to a silenced target, and if you're able to land the auto and quickly throw something else into it, pretty cool for sure. Almost done with these set bonuses, so let's finish these last ones. The Tenacity set. This one is wicked cool. Get grit for 2 seconds after getting staggered. However, you'll take slightly more damage. So basically, when you get staggered, they can't just chain stagger you, and instantly you'll get that grit, which is going to give you those 2 seconds to react however you would like to this. I do think that is massive. If you're somebody who's like, man, I'm just getting CC comboed, knocked down, and pushed here, and I get staggered, and I get bumped, and now I'm dead, and I couldn't even move. Boom, run this. You'll take the first one, and then just have a get out of jail plan, whether it's like pop and flashe, whether it's, triple rolling, get out, whatever you're doing. You got 2 seconds of grit to get it figured out. So super cool. I do think the Tenacity set is pretty awesome. Again, lots of cool options to run in here. I do think the armor pen is pretty strong. The crit chance is really good. Lots of really good options in here. Lastly, the focus set. This is going to be for healing. Not going to go into it too much, but super straightforward. Just going to increase your healing when they're outside of those primary abilities. Okay, let's get into these standalone infixes. These are super cool. So basically what these standalone infixes are is these are super powerful perks. They're almost like artifact perks. Some of them literally are artifact perks. Super cool. So running through these really quick, this Critical Storm. This is going to be if you're getting a bunch of crits back to back, basically. You can stack them up so that you're able to trigger a bolt of lightning. So 6 stacks. You have 0.5 seconds to get each stack, and the stacks last 10 seconds. So if you are able to pile those up really quickly, definitely able to do some burst damage. So super cool. Definitely one I'm contemplating on running. I think that's really cool. Thwarting Stun, hitting a target with grit or uninterruptible. So as you know, a lot of those heavy melee boys, medium melee boys, the ones that are running the show for the last 2 seasons, they always have grit. They're always uninterruptible. You can't do God knows anything to them. Even if you did, it does no damage, and they shrug it out. Good lord. It's giving you a little bit. If you hit them with it, you're doing a little bit of extra damage, and then your melee stacks will also, or your melee heavy can stun them if you have the full stacks on them. Super cool. Unstoppable, gain grit on melee heavy attacks. See, this is the 300 Constitution. perk that they removed, and so now this, as they said, this is going to be on a ring. So you'll have to run this if you want that. Alternating enchantment. This is from previous seasons. We're familiar with that. I'm not going to go too much into that, but that is when do a basic attack, ability does more. Do an ability, basic attack does more. Close quarters, I think this one is super cool. Light and heavy attacks with a ranged weapon will deal 20% more damage within 10 meters. So basically, if I'm up close and we're dueling and I'm lighting those bow shots off, my basic attacks will be ripping close quarters if I decide to run this. So super cool. Chain lightning. We got some Star Wars fans up in here. We got the Force lightning. I think that's super cool. Basically, every 10 seconds, if you're damaging with a magic weapon ability, again, this is very contingent. I think this sounds very cool, but I'll be honest, I'm not sold on this one. First of all, it's once every 10 seconds, whereas a lot of these other ones are much faster than that. So you can only do it 10 seconds. You can only do it with a magic weapon ability. And it's only really benefiting if there's a large group of targets so that you're actually able to disperse that damage more. And you deal 50% weapon damage. So super cool concept, I think, in theory, on paper, on this website where I'm highlighting. But in practice, I do not think this is very good. You're hitting yourself for 30% lightning damage. That is not great. There's plenty of these that have no downside, so choosing one of the ones that does. Truthfully, I just don't. I think this is one of the coolest sounding ones, but I think it's one of the worst ones. But it probably would look cool to shoot chain lightning through a bunch of people. I can imagine that would feel pretty cool, but I do not think it's that great. I mean, maybe if it didn't damage you at all, that could be pretty cool. Maybe if the cooldown was a little bit, but I don't know. Not something that I think is all that great. 50% of your weapon damage is not insane. So I don't know. I mean, if you're looking at the critical storm, you can deal 100% weapon damage to a target, rather than just tickling a bunch of targets where they're all just gonna get healed anyways. I don't know. Not too impressed with that. Anyways, empowering heal. Healing an ally gives you a stackable buff, increasing your damage by 1% for 10 seconds. So I think this is probably more of a PvE one. If you're running catacombs or a boss fight, if you're a healer in PvP, your damage is irrelevant. And if you think it is, then you're just playing the role wrong. So not a PvP perk for healers at all. Definitely going to be just something for PvE, so you can heal your team and switch to your Void Blade or whatever you're using to do DPS, and then just be a little bit more useful so that you're not completely useless in terms of DPS as a healer. So nice to see a little bit of buffs there. Adrenaline burst when your health drops below 50%. Crit enchants by nearly 20. That's super good. You want to get that surprise shot where, they think they got you killed, but really you got them. So the classic call an ambulance, but not for me. That's a cool one. I do like this perk. I'm obviously not even trying to drop below 50%, so I don't know. I probably won't run this, but I do think this is a cool perk, especially if you comboed this with the Enraged set where you're losing some of your health. So you kind of already want to be a little bit low on health. It's kind of my recommendation as you're looking through these. Try and find things that line up and work well, synergize together. So could be something viable for sure. Shredding backstabs. Backstabs penetrate 40% of your target's armor, but your crits deal 20% less damage. Interesting. I would have to run the numbers to see how that adds up. That 40% of target's armor is definitely very appealing, but I would imagine on maybe a light target this wouldn't be as good. So going to be obviously catered more towards if you're dealing with a lot of those heavy boys. You could definitely get through that armor. So super cool. Mo Mortar Mo Boom. Now that's just hilarious. I don't think anybody runs this ability or does anything with it, so I'm sure that's why they added this, to try and make it a little fun, goofy, funny, and maybe it's actually good. Your mortar charge is going to bounce and explode and do a bunch of damage. Whatever. Goofy. I won't be using it, but I'm glad to see it. Exerted spin. Whirlwind no longer needs to hit. Oh god, don't tell me we're buffing Tempest Fury, the Oh god. Whirlwind no longer needs to hit targets to continue spins. That's stupid. And can spin up to 12 times. When the spins end, it consumes all of your stamina and you become exhausted. Okay, at least there's a downside to it. I think they just need to remove this ability and this weapon from the game. I think it's stupid, but that's just my personal opinion. I won't go on a tangent. So, yeah, we're going to just move on before I crash out about Tempest Fury. Revive. Casting Life's Embrace on a downed player will revive them. That's pretty cool. Little, that's pretty cool. Not much to go into about that. Cool. Poisoned Affinity. Deal 15% more damage to poisoned enemies. Like I said, some of these were artifact perks. This is literally the artifact perk of the Aconite. Couldn't remember the name of it because it's so bad. This is the perk of Aconite. It has now become a standalone infix, so I don't know if you could run this with Aconite. It seems like that'd be kind of funny. Cool. And Cleansing Block. Block an attack removes a debuff. Super cool. All right. We are at the meat and potatoes section. So, pretty straightforward. I think it would be a bit insane to run through absolutely everything piece by piece, math by math. So, I guess the simple way of going through this is top 3 perks here. We've got Freedom, Vigor, Invigorated. All 3 of these are nerfed to 10%. We're not going to waste time. Hasted Vigor looks like it got a small buff, getting the 9% for the haste and reduction rather than the 7. Super cool. Physical Aversion, Elemental Aversion, both nerfed from 4.5 down to 3.6 and 3 respectively. Shrinking Heals looks like it's about the same. Fortified looks like it's about the same. Divine, something you can now run on your armor. So if you are running Shirking Heals, that's definitely something you're going to want to be stacking together. Shirking Heals with Divine, things like that. Alchemist Reprieve now is an armor perk as opposed to a as opposed to a necklace perk, so that's super cool. Anointed Lifesteal looks like it got a little buff, and you can keep stacking it. I think it was 3% before. We've got Grit Ward, we've got Enchanted Ward. Enchanted Ward got nuked, so that got cut in half, so get that off your gear. You don't want that anymore. I've been saying that. Potent Vivacity, Potent Energy, those are kind of all staying the same. And then Wellness, I do believe, is that new perk that they're just adding to replace the attributes on your amulets. So, offensive slot, big things right here. As you can see, Slash, Strike, and Thrust finally got their harnessing. Super exciting. So if you're running that strict melee, you don't have to split. If you're struggling to get in power, you can just stick with your specific damage type. I think this is super cool. Seems like there's a lot of weapon perks in here that got brought down into the armor section. So things like Vicious, Keen, Vorpal, Rogue, all of these got nerfed pretty hard in terms of numbers because it would seem that they're now going to be able to be stacked together on gear. A couple new perks right here. Enchanted, obviously that used to be on weapons, and then Skilled Enchantment, just the, ability version of that. So if you want to add a tiny little buff to those attacks, you definitely could. Going through here, Penetrating Headshot, again, that was, I believe, 22% and was a weapon perk. Seems like it's going to be an armor perk now and is much lower by the looks of it. Same with Penetrating Backstabs. Again, that was like 27. That got nerfed down. And then we kind of have all of our classic ring perks right here that have been nerfed down from their original values. And then our couple weapon perks. I'm not sure if Keenly Jagged and Keenly Empowered are going to be able to be put on gear, potentially. I don't know if this is going to be one of those situations like Worm, where you had your Keen Speed Boots, you had the Keen Chest, and you had these very special pieces of gear that you could get a weapon perk on that you couldn't get anywhere else. So, I'm on the lookout for the Keenly Jagged Gauntlets and the Keenly Empowered Helmet. Stuff like that I think could be super cool, fun things to hunt. As far as the weapons, I'm absolutely not going to go through all of this and read all of this. It's just going to tire me out. For the most part, everything got nerfed. A couple of things got reworked. A couple of things did get buffed. But for the large majority, like for the spear, for example, I'm pretty sure every single thing got nerfed. Every single percentage in here got nerfed. They changed perforate. Um, but as far as I know, like 90% of the, I was talking to my friends who play the different builds, and when I would run through these numbers with them, they're like, yep, that's a nerf. Yep, that's a nerf. Yep, that's a nerf. Like, look at that. Leeching Cyclone, 26%. Oh man, I love to see that. Spear was getting too popular. I was getting too strong. So again, I'm not going through all of these. I don't care to. The most important ones I would say focus on obviously your build. Look at that. Lucky for me, all of mine is right next to each other. So we will run through bow rapier because that is what we play. That is what is most important. But again, a lot of nerfs, so that I think to combat the idea where you can just put the perk on your gear and now it's OP. I think that's kind of the point of it. For the bow, again, everything right here got a tiny nerf. These three all just took a small nerf to a lot of those numbers. Penetrating rapid shot is the exact same, no change. Shattering pen shot. We got a rework on the pen shot ability, super cool. I'm excited to try this out. This is going to counter those shield users. Um, I'm very happy with this. I felt like that was one of the more difficult things to fight as a bow, is when someone's just sitting there with a shield and they're walking towards you and they take 2 steps, block, and 2 steps and block, and 2 steps and block. First of all, if you do that, I hate you and you are anti-fun and you need to go put on a more fun weapon to fight with. But second of all, now I don't care, because now you do that, I'm going to be ripping you with these pin shots and busting that stamina damage down. So super, super excited to see this. I can't believe they didn't rework Empowering Explosive Arrow. This is like the dumbest perk in the game. Like, you expect me to put this on my bow and get 40% empower when I'm already at 40% empower. I wish they would have reworked this. It's such a useless perk. But anyways, on that bow, again, Shattering Pen Shot. I think that is so sick. I'm so excited to switch over and run that. I've been wanting them to buff Pen Shot for so long. So super happy to see that. For the Rapier, it looks like Deadly Flourish got a buff. That's 70% more base damage. If I'm not wrong, I think it was like 40 or 41. So they definitely buffed that. Super cool. Sundering Riposte also got a buff. That went to 30% from 25%, so a 5% buff to that. Leeching Flurry, looks like they reworked it slightly. Heal for 40% of damage dealt, and then you can gain 30% damage reduction. So pretty cool. Vade looks to be the exact same, and then here, I'm not, I don't want to take credit for this, but all I'm saying is I did make a full video called The Rogue, where I did a whole rogue build and where I was flasheing people in the back. And I'm just saying, I may have inspired this perk name. And so for that very reason, I gotta run it. But super cool to buff this. This is definitely a buff to get a base damage percentage rather than a cooldown reduction, because you already get the cooldown reduction within the skill tree and stuff like that. So I'm a big fan. I'll definitely be running this perk. Again, for the rest, like Pillar of Fire got reworked to add a slow to it. So just go through, look at all your abilities. They do stand out if you play the game and you see the names. Like, the second you see the new name, you kind of instantly notice it and you're like, whoa, that's not what it used to be, like Sundering Essence. We remembered it was Refreshing Essence Rupture, and now they call it Sundering Essence because now it does rend. So again, go through, look at your abilities, you'll notice what has gotten changed. It does pop out at you very easily, so I recommend doing that. So here we are onto the fixed perks. All of these going down. There's nothing new here. I'm not going to run through these. These are all old perks. They're all the exact same. It looks like maybe... Yeah, it doesn't even look like any of those got tweaked at all. So, pretty simple. These are all basic old perks. Not running through those. There's a couple new ones in here, it looks like this Resurgence, this Critical Suppression, and... I think End could be a very good perk to run potentially for PvE, for evades. That was the first thing that I could think of. So there's a couple new perks that are in here. Life stealing got a small nerf to it, it looks like. But other than that, these are kind of basic perks that we are all very used to. Conditioning, they have finally added in the arcane and shock conditioning. Don't know why they wouldn't just call it lightning. I mean, I guess they did the same thing with a couple of these, but fair enough. That is the lightning conditioning that has finally been added to the game. Super cool. For our armor perks here, definitely got some cool perks. Shirking Fortification looks like it got a little buff. Thorny Reflection, I think, got a little buff. I don't know if anyone in the game runs that perk, but if you run that perk, let me know. I think that would be hilarious. Critical Retribution is the same. I'm definitely surprised they did not nerf Vital Synergy. I was definitely expecting that to get reworked or removed or nerfed or something, but it is the same. So that is super cool. Breaker's Bypass, new perk that I was super excited about. Again, talking about those melee players sitting there with a tower shield that you just can't even do anything against. This counters that. I love that. I'll definitely be running this perk. Allows me to stack up stamina damage to where I can just... You can't just sit there with a shield and block anymore since I'm running the bow. It's definitely something people abused if they saw me with the bow. Like, they could just block, and it was so hard to break stamina with the bow. So, love that. Prolonged Favor. Definitely think this could be a good perk for people to run. I think that depending on what it actually buffs, I don't know if it's going to buff Empowers. I don't know if it's going to buff, Haste. I don't know. Have to test that out, but that could definitely be something really cool. I thought this Sacrificial Empowerment is a very cool perk where, again, you're doing more damage, taking a little more damage, so it's that trade-off. And yeah, this Terminal Vengeance also, like we were talking about, I think that could pair well with the that Berserk set. Just those things where you're not max health doing more damage, I think is really cool. For trinkets, protection amulets, all got a nerf. I like that. Again, it seems like they're trying to get rid of this, oh, I can click one button and counter you. And I do really like that. So whether it's nerfing all of the abilities so that they can't just put on one ability and boom, now this is broken. Same thing, whether it's for duels, whether it's for whatever, you can't just throw on, if I'm running Bolt Caster, you can't just be like, oh, yep, put on my lightning protection and boom, now we got 20% mitigation. So nice to see that this is 10%. Honestly, part of me wishes they would just take out protection completely, but I don't mind. I'm glad that it got nerfed and that we are at 10% right now. These are going to be perks for our amulets. There's a lot of really cool ones in here. It does look like Shirking Power got a slight buff. Unimpeded is staying the same, and then these are kind of our two new ones. Pretty cool. Reduce basic damage by 10%, but increase ability damage by 5%. So, if you were just going against a rapier person who's just constantly auto-attacking you like crazy or something like that, or vice versa, they're never auto-attacking you and only doing abilities, so you could run that. I do think that's pretty cool. For the rings, damage 8%, nothing new. Healing Breeze does look like a solid nerf. I love that. That needed it. Healing Breeze is tanked, so I never really indexed into it. I never cared for it. I just wanted it to get nerfed, and it did, so we're happy. Invigorated Punishment got a slight buff. You love to see it. Cursed Enchantment, Cursed Skill. I do think these are two very cool abilities to think about integrating into your build. I don't know if I can make them work with what I'm trying to run, but I do think this is a very cool trade-off to where you can be choosing basically which side you want to fall on, if you want to be on the basic attack side or the ability side, and you can sacrifice 10% to gain 10%, which I think is very cool. So, like, for example, if you were running musket and you had traps and you had grenade and you really don't have that many abilities that are hitting that hard and you just want your basic attacks to crack, something I could see you running where you don't care how much, if you lose 10% damage on your trap, and you don't care if you lose 10% on your grenade, but what you do have is bang, 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 every single one of those is hitting 10% harder. So super cool. I do like the way that they're moving with all these different perks and stuff. I think that's super cool. Again, kind of just flat damage buffs right here without the downside, but obviously with a much smaller upside. So you can choose what you want there. Going through, I do think this Rogue Alacrity is a super cool perk. Backstabbing a target with haste, takes it, gives it to you essentially. I think that's really cool if you're like chasing a healer or something. If you're chasing me, it could be super strong. So I am just excited to see a perk like that. I do think that's cool. But the first thing that comes to my head is a healer running away from me, and I have my rapier out, and I'm trying to flashe and evade, and they're just zooming away from me. So I'm definitely thinking about running that perk. I think that's really cool. I might pop that out, and the first thing that pops into your head, maybe it's the same as me, or maybe the first thing that popped into your head is you're chasing me, and you want to kill me, so you think that perk would be good. Either way, I think that's really cool. For earrings, refreshing has gotten moved off of gear, it would seem like, and onto earrings exclusively. So rather than stacking for refreshing, it seems like running 10% on your earring is going to be your only option for that. So I think that's cool. It makes it more exclusive and kind of just gives you that one option to where, hey, if you want it, you got to run it right here, and that's it. So I'll probably be making that switch off of Nimble and running this on my earring potentially. I'll go do some number crunching and see what I think about that. But yes, refreshing and refreshing move seem to have both gotten swapped over here. Um, so yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. There's going to be some nerfs here and updates for these artifacts. I think the biggest ones to kind of go over. Um, Old Crown and Attune Leather Pants, they both got a small nerf to the amount of attributes they give. Featherweight, big nerf. You're going to get slow when you get staggered. So Featherweight isn't just this blanket buffed artifact that every single person is running. Again, if you get staggered, you're getting an 8% of slow for 4 seconds. So nothing insane, but I'm sure that's not going to be fun if you're running Featherweight. Tumblers, significant nerf to tumblers. I was actually considering running tumblers this season, but with the collective nerf to tumblers and ink, I definitely am not going to be running these. Finisher, also massive nerf. Only a trigger occurring when it's on your bleeds, so you can't just pop it with everybody's bleeds and doing all of that. So I think this is in line with how they mentioned they just wanted more things to be viable for PvE and stuff like that, and so that's obviously what this is in reference to, because everybody ran Finisher every raid, and everyone had to have this blah 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 blah. So cool to see that they're doing that. And then yeah, just some basic nerfs to what I think from here. Well, let's say from here. These are all nerfs, right? Because everybody was using these everywhere. Everyone was using Crescent Wave, Old Crown, Attune Leather Pants, Featherweight, or Tumblers, or Finisher, right? Like that was 90% of players were using that. And then I believe from here down, these are all buffs. Besides Plague Herald, I know Plague Herald got nerfed. But everything else, I think these are all buffs. So Blood Drinker got buffed, reduced that damage slightly, so you're doing a little bit more. Quick Draw Gloves, they got an Empower added to it. Basically these are artifacts nobody was using, and so people will hopefully use them more. And Dorgor's Blade is the other rapier, and they gave it the similar style where you can pop all of your burns the similar way that you could pop all your bleeds with Finisher. So I do think they're trying to push Dorgor's Blade, trying to make it the new rapier. That's sick. I'm all here for it. It always sucks when there's an artifact that already exists. They release a new one, like the Finisher exists. They come out with this new cool rapier, Dorgor's Blade, and then it's just completely useless, and absolutely nobody uses it, and everybody says, "Yep, I'm gonna keep still using the old one." Kind of the same thing with the bow. When Aconite came out, it was like, "Yep, this sucks, and I'm just gonna keep using Bolt Catcher." Nerf to the Plague Herald. The disease on yourself has gotten doubled. So apparently that 1% wasn't enough, so it is now 2%. So at 10 stacks, you will be at 20%. For weapons, looks like very, very small buffs to a lot of these things, and then very, very small nerfs to a couple things, like literally increasing base damage by 1, 2, or 3. Obviously, we love to see those bow buffs. You love to see it. It seems like about 50% of the weapons got a little buff, so glad to know that we're still in that tier that likes getting buffed. We're not like, we're not like the Fire Staff, right? We don't need We don't need a damage mitigation. Come on now. We're running the bow. We're running the hardest weapon to play in the game. Of course, we're getting a buff. Got to aim every single shot we hit. So super sick. But again, just like 1, 2, 3 base damage, little tiny modifiers to these. Like this Great Axe, there's no way in the world you ever notice a 0.05 crit damage multiplier. You're never noticing that. So super cool. Hopefully these make just a tiny little bit of difference. Like I said, all I care about is that my bow got buffed. I think that's sick. I also think it's insane that the Great Axe got buffed in even in the silly, non-noticeable the fact that we are buffing the Great Axe is criminal. It should be illegal. Um, Anyways, just a couple little extra things here. Nothing too important that I care to go over in this information. But I guess the only thing is that Nighthaven, it says here, has been added to territory control. I do think that's super cool. That's going to mean that we can war there. Hopefully it's a cool battlefield. I know the settlement's going to be sick. So I'm glad that Nighthaven can be warred over because that was something I was thinking. Yeah, I think these are those 2 special mounts that we can get from the new raid that have a 0.5% chance of dropping. So that's super cool. But that is going to cover it. I hope that this helped you guys. I know there's so much info in here, and so I hope this saves you guys some time. So you don't have to spend hours going through everything, and you can just watch this video. So again, Season 10 is coming tomorrow. I hope you are locked in. I hope you are ready. I cannot wait. This has been Bo King. I hope you're hyped for it. And I guess I'll catch you in Season 10. Peace.